happy new year. I hope 2021 is good for you and you are safe. I'm sorry it's been so long since my last upload. However, if I'm honest, I've lacked a little bit of motivation in 2020. All of the content that I had planned to make, like an 8-week road trip around the ski resorts in Australia, and even now where I'm meant to be in the French Alps, has had to be cancelled due to lockdown restrictions. However, the positives are I've been looking on YouTube, you guys have been engaging in some of my older content, and I've really appreciated that. And that has got me out here in the garage in the freezing cold, you can probably see my breath, to actually go through some gear with you in this new little series called Gear in the Garage. Okay, so for today's Gear in the Garage, and the very first one, I have got this. I was hoping to unwrap this in France. It is a Salomon HPS Tacker 161 splitboard with a nice kind of neon yellow base. I'm going to get this unwrapped, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to mount your splitboard bindings, specifically the Union Expedition bindings, on your splitboard. Okay, to start with, the most satisfying part of getting any new board, getting it open, getting rid of the cellophane, nice. So, one of the things that's really nice about Salomon splitboards in particular, and I'll go into more detail on this when I actually do a full board review, is they come with their own pair of custom skins, but we don't need that today, so I'm just going to chuck those away. And we have got our splitboard. As I said, today we're going to be using the Union Expedition binding. So the Union Expedition binding comes with lots of different parts, and it could be easy to get confused in the beginning, especially if this is your first time setting up a splitboard. So don't worry, we're going to go through it step by step and go through all the different parts that you need. First stage, and hopefully you've got an idea of how you like your stance. I like my stance about 22.5 inches wide. Take a tape measure and have a look on your board for the holes, and if you want to, you can mark this with a little bit of a removable pen or with a bit of tape, but I know that I'm going between the second and third holes on both the back and the front foot. Now you've got an idea where your base plates are going to go, the first thing that you'll need to do is get your adapter plates. These come in 2 halves, and you're just going to place them over the relevant holes that you would like to add your bindings to. Once your adapter plates are in place, it's time to screw them in. Now Once your adapter plates are in place, it's time to screw them in. Now just beware, there is 2 size screws that come in the pack. You will need both, but to start with, we're just going to use the smaller screw, and we're going to put the larger screw over to the side. With the 4 smaller screws, you just put them in the relevant hole. It's important as well, before you screw them in, you take the adapter plate guide, put it in place, and that should hold your adapter plate in exactly the right position. After you've done that, take the screwdriver or your snowboard tool and gently tighten all 4 holes before going back around to completely tighten them. Once you've completed that for one binding and you've put one adapter plate down, just repeat the process on the other binding. Once you've got both of your adapter plates screwed in, you can remove the guide and your board should look something like this. To mount your binding discs onto the adapter plates, you're going to need 3 things. First of all, 2 binding discs, they separate. 2 binding angle gauges, I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but that's what I'm going to call them. And you're going to need 4 of the longer screws for each binding. If you've got all of that stuff, first thing is to take your binding angle gauge and you need to set it to your relevant stance angle that you like to ride at. Do my back foot first. This bit is a little bit fiddly. Once you've got your angle that you like, you can just line that up. There is 2 holes on the adapter plate, and you take a screwdriver and the long screws and drill the first side, or screw the first side down into place. I would recommend that you do this loosely to start off with, because you might want to change it once you actually try and put the binding on the board. After you've done your back foot or your front foot, whichever you've done first, you can then go to your other binding, make sure that you set the correct angle, and we're just going to repeat the process again, making sure that our opposite binding is screwed into place. All being well, board should look a little bit like this. The binding plates sat on top of the adapter plates, and then we just need to check whether the bindings fit on and that we're happy with them. Once we're happy with them, we can then just tighten down those screws so they're going to stay in place. The Union Expeditions are a pin binding, which means the first thing you're going to have to do is remove the pin from the middle. You're going to take the binding, put it over the binding plates facing towards the rear of the board, and then you're just going to rotate it around 90 degrees. Should slot into place. Take the pin through the middle. Can be a bit stiff to start with, and then slot the pin in behind the rear of the binding. That one is now locked into place, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to take the screwdriver and I'm just going to tighten up those screws. Once you've got one binding locked on the board, all you have to do is repeat that process again with the other foot. Once both the bindings are on, you should be locked in then for riding mode. However, it's a split board and we still need to set up touring mode. Touring mode is really easy. It's the case of a bracket and 3 screws. So let's give that a go. To set the snowboard up into touring mode, first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to remove both of the bindings. It can be a little bit tight the first couple of times you do it. And for now, I'm just going to place them down on the floor. Once your bindings are removed, what you're going to need is 2 times the front touring brackets and 6 of the little screws. Once you've got your touring brackets, what you're going to do is find the place on each individual ski with 3 holes for screws, and you're simply going to place your touring bracket over those 3 holes. You're going to take your small screws, a bit fiddly again if you're like me, and you are just going to place them one into each of the holes. Once they're in place, take your screwdriver and just tighten the screws. Now it's up to you whether you put on the adapter plates and the actual bindings first, or whether you put on your touring brackets first. Doesn't really matter which order you do it in. Okay, so now your touring brackets are mounted, you need to take the split board apart by unclipping the hooks on the nose and tail of the board and then just separating it. I'm going to put one of my skis over to the side. Okay, and I'm going to have a go at mounting the binding in touring mode. So this is my right ski when it comes to walking, so I'm going to get my right side of the binding. I'm going to match up the 2 holes at the front of the binding, push it forward so that I know it's in the right place, and then push the pin all the way through, and then slot the front of the pin inside the front of the binding. That is touring mode. If you need to, You've got a little extension on the rear of the binding which can help you on the steeps. And that is it for the Union Expedition. I hope you found that video useful. I will try and put a few more videos together while I am stuck here in the UK. This is the first in the series, as I said, Gear Talk in the Garage. If there's anything that you would like to hear or know about, drop it down below in the comments. If you found it useful, please like. I'll see you next week for another video.